Well, 3 videos for you today, so you're going to be very, very lucky. So this one first. Take this with a grain of salt, and I really do mean that. Take it with an absolute grain of salt. There are rumors going around today that rebel Tory MPs are saying they have reached the magic number, and that there could be a leadership challenge as next week. If that's true, amazing. If not, we don't know. But what have we got to actually back this up? Well, if you've been sort of paying attention, there have been a lot of Conservative MPs literally on the drip, almost as if someone's turned on a tap, coming out and saying Johnson must resign, or or going public with their letter, more publicly saying that they're going to saying he should resign, which spells bad news for him because, as we've said, this is a two-stage process. It's not just those letters. Those letters then start the process of a no confidence vote. That's if Johnson decides he's going to contest it. He may not. He may step down. We do not know. So far, he has stated, well, his team has stated that any vote of no confidence he will contest. So that will go down to a vote. And of course, we don't know what could happen in that vote. As we've said before, it is a secret ballot. You do not know who has voted which way. You only know the exact number. And I think it could be close. I really do think so. But given the fact that we've had such an outpouring of anger, and one of the key things you've seen a lot of Conservative MPs say this week is they have been receiving a lot of angry emails and letters, and not just from the quote regular complainers, but from other people in their CLP and other people that they've never actually heard of, who are in their constituency, who are angry at them for not acting against Boris. So let's go dipping and diving, shall we say, into this, because I think this is going to be interesting. And annoyingly, I'm in Bruges next week, so typically this is all going to go down when I'm away next week. So let's go diving into this then. So this comes from The Guardian, the title of Johnson's lurch to the right adds momentum for a leadership vote. So this is quite interesting because one of the things it does pick up on is that the more moderates in the Conservative Party are not happy about what Johnson has been trying to essentially throw out, move to imperial measurements, changing the ministerial code literally at the 11th hour so that no one could do anything as Parliament went on recess. They're back on Monday, obviously for the Queen's Jubilee. But like I say, this could get interesting pretty fast next week. If this is true, we will probably hear Monday morning, I think. So fingers crossed, fingers crossed, guys, that this is true. But like I say, take it very, very much with a pinch of salt. So Boris Johnson's lurch to the right after Partygate is fueling even more anger amongst rebel Tory MPs, with momentum now building for a leadership challenge next week. Conservative whips spent the first days of recess anxiously phoning around the parliamentary party to try and shore up for the Prime Minister. As at least 4 more MPs have called on him to resign, including Jeremy Wright, the former Attorney General. Several Tory MPs told The Guardian they believe the threshold of 54 letters of withdrawing support for Johnson was close to being crossed or may have been already. This would trigger a secret ballot on whether they have confidence in the Prime Minister. We don't know about almost announcing if it has been passed, and of course that is up to Graham Bradley, who is the chair of the 1922 committee. There has been, if you may remember, just a couple of days ago, we went over the fact that he is not obliged to report on if Parliament goes into recess. He doesn't have to say anything until maybe they come back. He might say something in the intervening time. We don't know. So Anyway, it continues. It is understood that Sir Graham Bradley, the chair of the 1922 committee, will have to use his own judgment about whether to announce the milestone being passed straight away or if it looms while Parliament is off this week, which is again what we've just said. Or wait until Monday when the House of Commons returns after the Queen's Jubilee celebrations. One backbench critic of the MP said that MPs from the 2019 intake were gathering their courage to put in letters before next Monday. But were worrying about the repercussions if Number 10 were to identify them after an unsuccessful coup. We've talked about numerous times of those 2019 intake, those new MPs, most of them from the Red Wall, who pretty much owe their positions to Jonson, but has also been the most loudest critics in his party because they are the ones who got elected on all Jonson's promises of like leveling up. And as we said back in the whole by-election, the post, shall we say, the after battle reports, should we say, on the ground of interviewing people, where some people were basically saying, yeah, first time I've ever voted Conservative. So you promised us money, so now start paying up. And remember, that MP for Hull, almost a week after, was standing up in the House of Commons, going after Boris and criticising him for lack of level up funding and stuff like that. So it looks like upon them to shall we say, deliver the swift one to Boris, so to say. So they said that the opposition to Jonson was increasingly coordinated and determined to trigger a vote, with almost 30 MPs having publicly declared their opposition so far. In this statement, withdrawing support for the Prime Minister, Wright said, Jonson had done real and lasting damage to the institution of government. While he could not be sure that the Prime Minister had misled Parliament, Jonson had been best negligent in how he had approached the issue. Elton Corbyn, a Tory MP with a small majority against Lib Dems, said he had put in a letter some time ago, while Nick Aitken, the City of London and Westminster MP, whose council turned to Labour this month, called on Jonson to bring an end to the situation by submitting a no-confidence letter himself. Tory MP Andrew Brigden also told constituents he had resubmitted his letter. The dismay over Jonson's premiership is worsening among the Tories in the so-called blue wall seats, at risk of losing them to the Lib Dems, and red wall marginals, where they have narrow majorities over Labour. With Jonson's failure, with Johnson's future now in balance, Number 10 has been launching a number of right-wing nationalistic policies in recent weeks. These include the return of imperial measurements, plans to override the Northern Ireland Protocol, a hint about expanding grammar schools, a review of fracking, and repeated promises to tear up more EU regulation. A cabinet minister told The Guardian that Jonson appeared to be trying to stop the right of the party turning against him in the event of a leadership challenge, citing policies such as the review of fracking, which is electorally unpopular but appeals to the majority in Parliament. But Tory pollsters and some centrist MPs warned that this core vote direction was the wrong route to go down, with public trust in Jonson so low among swing voters. Tobias Ellwood, the former Tory minister and chair of the Defence Committee, warned, "We will lose the next election on the current trajectory as reflected in the recent elections. This is not just a concern about the conduct and behaviour in Number 10, but because that breach of trust with the British people, this is now concerns about how Number 10 is thinking of what our policies are." On the weights and measurements policy, he told Sky News, "There will be some people in our party which will like this nostalgic policy in the hope that it's enough to win the next election. But this is not the case. This is not one nation conservative thinking that is required to appeal beyond our base." One Tory cabinet source said the imperial measurements policy was absolutely bananas, while another cabinet source said they had no idea which Muppet came up with the idea. I love that quote. This is not what the government's overall strategy is about. Another Conservative MP said that he represented a seat in the middle of England, and about half of the core Conservative voters had lost faith in the Prime Minister. With some local government leaders also expressing a lack of confidence in Johnson, Rishi Sunak's local council leader, Carl Lates, the Conservative leader of North Yorkshire County Council, said that he thought it was time for a leadership election, blaming Johnson for the heavy losses in the local election. I'm very disappointed with the strong majority that we had in North Yorkshire has been diminished down to a working majority, but only just. And a lot of the comments we were getting on the doorstep were about the impact of Partygate, he said. The warnings for MPs and councillors were echoed by the pollsters and political strategists, including former number 10 advisors James Johnson and Will Tanner. Both said that Johnson was on course to lose the next election by swinging to the right instead of focusing on delivering goals on schools, hospitals, housing, and the cost of living. Tanner, formerly number 10 aide and the director of Conservative think tank Onward, said, "My view is that whilst it is understandable that the Prime Minister and Downing Street would want to demonstrate their commitment to right-wing policy issues to try and satisfy some of his backbenchers, at the moment we're clear the Prime Minister is worried about his future. Those issues are not going to win the Conservative Party the next election." He said he, quote, had never sat in a focus group or conducted a poll where issues like imperial weights or measures or even Channel 4 privatisation has even come up repeatedly. From the voters, Johnson is seeking to court. He added, "It's NHS, immigration, crime, wages, good jobs in my town. Those are the fundamentals that the Conservative Party needs to be focusing on, not the quite small and niche issues which only matter to a few people." We've talked about this before about big tense parties. It's not just, as we've said before, applies to the Labour Party. Very much applies to the Conservative Party as well. And James Johnson, a pollster with LJ Partners who worked for Theresa May, said some of the things that might have raised a smile in the past will actually inevitably ridicule. The pounds and ounces thing being a good example of that. We're approaching a situation with Johnson similar to the one we faced with Corbyn, where the individual policies might be popular, but the brand attached to them is toxic. So, interestingly enough, as I said before at the beginning, we'll have to see how this goes. We don't know which way, of course, this is going to happen. If it is true that they have reached or are closing in on that number, we will probably either maybe find out this weekend, maybe we'll find out some point this week. Who knows? It depends. All depends on saying on Graham Bradley whether he announces it or not. Like I say, the Parliament has risen, meaning they're essentially on holiday or taking a break. So we're gonna have to wait and find out what happens. That's the situation we're in again. So yeah, take this with a very much pinch of salt. But as you can see, most of the Conservative here not happy. They are not happy with the direction of what Johnson has done. They are not happy with the direction they are pushing the party in. Remember, much of the former UKIP platform has pretty much been adopted by the current Tory party at the moment, pushing the party even further right. And just as we saw, as we mentioned at the end, where Labour and Corbyn was pushing the party more and more to like a further socialist left, which again, don't have a problem with. But the problem is when you've got a big tent party, you push away more of those moderates. And as I keep on saying, you've got 25% who in these polls come out with 25% on the left, 25% on the right, and depending on which poll you see, it can be either 30 to 35% who come out as centrist. So we have a massive centrist sort of population of voters here in the UK, and if the parties start to go too far in the direction, well, they start to move themselves. And I think we could be seeing that. Like I say, the imperial weights and measurements is completely ridiculous. And it's a question of what else might Johnson decide to try and throw out to try and appease, especially more of his hard right Tory MPs. And as we've said before, those are the ones who have certainly Johnson pushed out. He pushed out a lot of moderates to put those guys in. You've got the Red Wall MPs who are again not happy with the direction the party's moving in. It could all get very, very interesting very quickly next week. Needless to say, and the annoying thing is, I'm in Bruges next week. So, as always, thank you very much for watching. Please do hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below, there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you all next